Okay. Yes. Modern psychology started with Freud, but writers and philosophers, well before Freud, had already discussed the relationship between literature and psychology. Philosophers like Schopenhauer, Schlegel, Nietzsche, and all these philosophers had discussed the relationship between literature and psychology. And Freud, it was Freud who theorized this body of knowledge which we now call psychology. And so he has been rightly called the father of modern psychology. And so, psychoanalytical criticism is something related to psychoanalysis. And psychoanalysis was a therapy, a form of therapy invented by Sigmund Freud. And Sigmund Freud, was an Austrian psychiatrist, not a psychiatrist at that time, there was no psychiatry, a medical practitioner, to be precise, he was a medical practitioner. And he was born in the year 1856 and died in 1939, an Austrian Jew. And he was a medical practitioner, and as a medical practitioner, he was interested in the interaction between the interaction between the mind and the body. So he thought that several diseases had their origin in the psychological workings of the patients. And now these diseases are called the psychosomatic diseases, like headache, giddiness, then diarrhea, then stomach pain, and this can be caused by mental tensions. And such diseases are now called psychosomatic diseases. And Freudian psychoanalysis is basically a therapy which aims to cure mental illness by investigating the interaction between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. So that is another contribution of Freud. He classified the human mind from three different perspectives. They are the dynamic, the economic, and the topographical. So from these three different perspectives, he had theorized the human psyche. And from the topographical point of view, the human psyche is classified into three. And which are they? Conscious, preconscious, and the unconscious. Conscious, preconscious, and the unconscious. And what is the conscious mind? The conscious mind is our perception system. So now we all know where we are. And that is our conscious mind. It is the perception system which acts as an agency to deal with the external world. And the second one is the preconscious mind. It can be said as the seat of memory. Suppose if I ask you to recollect what happened in your life the day before yesterday, you can definitely recollect, which means those things are not present in your conscious mind, but they are stored somewhere else from where you can retrieve them. And that part of the psyche is what is called the preconscious mind. But suppose if I ask you to recollect what happened in your life on your third birthday, it is almost impossible. But don't worry, they are still there in another part of the human psyche. So, if they are stored in the preconscious mind, you can definitely retrieve them back to the conscious mind. And the third is perhaps the most problematic part of the human psyche, which is the unconscious mind. The villain, the most problematic part of the human psyche. And so three different persons, theorists, defined the unconscious in three different ways. And one was, of course, Freud. And Freudian unconscious is a tabula rasa at the time of birth. It is a clean slate, a tabula rasa. There is nothing in it at the time of birth. But as the child advances in age, the child learns to suppress certain desires and emotions which are unacceptable to the society or unacceptable to others in the family or in the society. And those suppressed feelings, and there is a technical term for this suppression. In psychoanalysis, it is called repression. It is a psychological censorship. Repression means a psychological censorship on those emotions which are not accepted by the society or unacceptable to the society. And those repressed feelings in course of time constitute what is called the unconscious mind. But I told you this is the most problematic part of the human psyche. We cannot understand the content of the unconscious mind. But at the same time, we can feel the potentiality, the power of the unconscious mind even in our day-to-day life. So you just observe the people sitting beside you. You can see that they are unconsciously involved in a lot of activities like shaking the leg or scratching the head or putting the finger inside the nose or inside the ears or biting the nail. These are all unconscious activities. So that means, so these are demanded by the activities demanded by the unconscious mind. So that means, and the main psychological cause for this is that a socially, in all these things, in most often, a socially unacceptable behavior is now replaced with an acceptable harmless behavior in public. And so there is a related concept in psychology called sublimation. Sublimation means, in sublimation, a particular unacceptable behavior, and in most cases they are related to sexuality. Such behaviors are replaced by unacceptable social behavior, acceptable social behavior. And according to Freud, over religiosity and over indulgence in charity works are sublimation, examples of sublimation. But for God's sake, if you happen to know a person who frequently visits temples or churches, I know what you are. Don't think so. So, that is a kind of sublimation. Over religiosity can be a form of sublimation according to Freud. And that is an important contribution of Freud. That is the division of the human psyche. This is called the topographical division of the human psyche. That is conscious, preconscious and the unconscious. And apart from this, there is another division called the structural division of the human psyche. And here the human psyche is divided again into three: the id, ego and the superego. Id refers to the animal instincts arising out of the constitutional needs of the body. And ego is definitely the conscious mind, the conscious. And then the superego is, or in simple terms, it can be the conscience or the societal or familial or parental influence. So these are the two classifications, the topographical and the structural. And then another contribution of Freud, which is very closely related to literature, is his theory of Oedipus complex. That name itself is taken from the myth of Oedipus. And I think it is perhaps the most widely misunderstood Freudian concept, because many people think that Oedipus complex refers to a kind of sexual attachment, a sexual relationship between the mother and the son. But it is not so. It is actually an inevitable stage in the lives of all men in the world. And so that means, say after 3, that is in the phallic stage, the male child becomes obsessed by his love for his mother. And both the male and the female children are very intimate and physically close to the mother, like breastfeeding and the like. But the son finds it actually an obsessive kind of attachment. And so, according to Freud, it develops in 3 stages. Oedipus complex develops in 3 stages. In the first stage, we can see this obsessive love for the mother. But in the second stage, we can see he finds his father as a rival. He finds his father as a rival. And once Freud made a very controversial statement. He said that if a child of 3 is given the strength and power of a man of 30, the first thing that he will do is to break his father's neck. So this is a very controversial point indeed. And so all these theories were, controversial indeed. So that is the second stage, rivalry with the father. And the last stage is that in which the child develops what is called the castration complex. Castration complex. And what is castration complex? The child becomes, so this is not my theory, Freud's theory. He says that when the child, sees his father as the rival, he becomes afraid of him. The child becomes afraid of the fact that if he goes on with his obsessive love for his mother, he will be castrated. He will be castrated by the father. So the son, the boy becomes afraid of the fact that he will be castrated by his father. And then when he, at this stage, if the boy happens to see the vagina of a girl, he thinks that she is a castrated male, and this castration complex is reinforced. And what happens to the girl then? When the girl sees the penis of the boy, she thinks, she becomes jealous of him for the possession of that organ. And this is what Freud called the penis envy. And these are all controversial theories indeed. And these were violently, attacked by the feminist critics. And then, but don't worry. A little later we will discuss Lacan, and Lacan will give logical explanation to all these things.
She'll be happy.
Yes. So
I'll wait.
So these are the 3 stages. The first stage is the stage of obsession, then rivalry, and castration complex. And thus, in the beginning of the adolescent age, the boy now shifts his focus from his mother to other women around him. And then he thinks of a girlfriend. And this shift must take place in the case of all men. And that is a natural course of events. But what happens if this, shifting does not take place? And there will be naturally problems. And so the best example is Hamlet. And there is a very famous book, Hamlet and Oedipus, in which who is the author? Hamlet and Oedipus? Dr. Ernest Jones. Dr. Ernest Jones was the biographer of Freud, a faithful Freudian, and Dr. Ernest Jones' book was published in 1948. And in this book, Hamlet and Oedipus, Ernest Jones said that Hamlet was, what is the problem in Hamlet? His procrastination. Because in the first act itself, the ghost appeared and told Hamlet that he was killed by his brother, Claudius. And then the ghost asked Hamlet to take revenge on Claudius. And then this was followed by long days of, or even months of procrastination. To be or not to be, that is the question. That was his condition. And so in the second act, he did nothing. And in the third act, what did he do? Absolutely nothing. And in the fourth act, still nothing. And in the fifth act, yes, he acted. And in the very act, he lost his own life too. This was actually what happened to Hamlet, and why did he procrastinate? And as an answer to this question, Dr. Ernest Jones said that this is a statement: Hamlet was incapacitated by a greater guilt. That was what he said. Hamlet was incapacitated by a greater guilt. And so that term, greater, is significant because it is in comparative degree. Greater. And when do we use comparative degree usually? when there are at least two things. So which means there are two guilts here and one is greater than the other. So which are the two guilts here? One is of course the guilt that we know, Claudius' guilt, because he killed his brother and married his sister-in-law, and so he is guilty of murder and also an incestuous marriage. But what about Hamlet? What about the other guilt? That was the guilt of Hamlet. His guilty love for his mother. He was a mother-fixated son. And so that was the problem in Hamlet. And so he was incapacitated by a greater guilt. So he was asked to punish the guilty, but what about himself? He himself was having a greater guilt in his mind. It is because of that fact that he could not act. And now we have a doubt that Hamlet was in love with Ophelia. And so that is our, understanding about the play. Hamlet was in love with Ophelia. But how? How can we say that Hamlet was in love with Ophelia? And to him, Ophelia was, from the perspective of Ernest Jones, Ophelia was a screen to hide his ignoble passion for his mother. And so that is why we cannot see much dialogues in which he announced his unconditional love for Ophelia. But there is one dialogue in which he announced his love. What is that dialogue? After the death of Ophelia, when her body was lowered to the pit, he jumped into the pit and he took the corpse in his eyes, in his hands, and bestowed kisses after kisses on face. And then he announced, 20,000 brothers cannot stop me. Remember, this he did only when he became sure of the fact that there was no Ophelia between himself and his mother. So he acted, he showed this kind of love only when he became sure that Ophelia was no more. And then Hamlet himself was aware of the fact that he was guilty, he was a sinner. He was guilty and he was a sinner. So that was actually reflected in the dialogue. So his dialogue to Ophelia, that famous dialogue, get thee to a nunnery rather than become a breeder of sinners. Get thee to a nunnery rather than become a breeder of sinners. So what is the meaning of that dialogue? So we can see two meanings. On an innocent level, we can see that he is asking Ophelia to become a nun, and that is better than becoming a mother. Better than becoming a mother and becoming breeder of sinners. But things are not as innocent as that. Because in the Elizabethan age, nunnery was a slang term for the brothel. Nunnery was a slang term for the brothel. So that means, get thee to a nunnery means go and become a prostitute, which is better than becoming a mother of a sinner. And which means this dialogue was not meant for Ophelia, though it was spoken to Ophelia. It was not meant for Ophelia. It was his indirect dialogue to whom? To his own mother. And so he himself was aware of the fact that he was a sinner. And that is why he said, the time is out of joy that I was born to set it right. So he was asked to punish the guilty, but what was special about him? He was more guilty than the guilty himself. And in Malayalam there is a beautiful saying, Kannil podiyunde, podi edukkan chellunnavare kanil irkku. That was the case with Hamlet, and that was why he procrastinated. So this is the Freudian reading of Hamlet offered by Dr. Ernest Jones. And another important contribution of Freud is his interpretation of dreams. And so what is his interpretation of dreams? He according to him, the dream is a wish fulfillment. The dream is a wish fulfillment. And so when I said this in one of my classes, a student asked me a very perplexing question. She asked me, sir, suppose a woman saw in her dream so that her son died. So suppose a mother in her dream sees that her son died. Her son died. Is it a wish fulfillment? That's the first thing. The mother dreams that her son died, and is it a wish fulfillment? And luckily the same question, more or less the same question was asked to Freud also. And a patient, one of his patients, a woman, she was a patient and she told Freud about a dream. In her dream she saw that her 15-year-old girl was lying in a black box. This was the dream. Her daughter, the 15-year-old girl, lying in a black box. And most probably it is a coffin. Lying dead in a coffin. That may be. And so Freud said that, of course, this is a wish fulfillment. So for that we need to know the biographical information of this woman. So some 15 years ago, this woman was not on good terms with her husband. And so she wanted a divorce. And at that time she was pregnant. And so she wanted a divorce and she did not want the child to be born. And at that time abortion was not easy. So she used to hit at the stomach. But the child survived all the blows and was born. And now she is 15. And the day before she had this dream, she happened to know a German word which means black box. Black box. And in German, the same word has another meaning also, the womb. Black box and the womb. In German slang, it is the womb. And so now, when she heard that particular term, her mind traveled back and retrieved the experience of 15 years. Experience of some 15 years ago. And this was why she had the dream that her daughter died. So this is an example of Freudian analysis. And then again, in behind the dream there are two major processes. One is, which are they? My students are there. Condensation and displacement. These are the two major processes behind every dream. What is condensation? So what is the actual duration of a dream? Only 2 seconds. That is the actual duration of a dream. So only 2 seconds. That is the duration of a dream. Which means, but at the same time, in every dream there are two kinds of contents. Two contents are there. What we see as the dream is the manifest content. But what induces that dream is the latent content. So these are the two contents of the dream. What we see as dream is manifest content. What induces that dream is the latent content. But in most cases, the latent content may cover the experiences of several months or years. And the point is that all those experiences must be compressed to 2 seconds. And that's a very powerful process indeed. And that is what's called a condensation. And another thing is displacement. And in displacement, what happens is that this displacement may take place. I mean, displacement of elements within the dream. And there, most of us may have persecutory dreams. I mean, persecutory dreams means in which we see ourselves being chased or attacked by some monster. Persecutory dreams. And a monster with the 4 arms or a monster with the 2 heads. And such monsters are usually in the dream. But at the same time, we have a feeling that this monster is somewhat familiar to me. I know him somewhere. What may be the reason? Because in actual life, there can be a lot of persons who really persecute us. Maybe an oppressive professor in college. Maybe an oppressive boss or an oppressive parent or spouse.
Head of the department.
Maybe the head of the department. Such persons can be there in our real life. But in the dream, as part of condensation, one image is superimposed over the other. And the result is a new figure carrying the features of all the actual persons. And that is why the monster seems somewhat familiar to us. A kind of caricaturing, a photoshopping, indeed. This is what happens in the dream. That is what's called displacement. Another example is a woman, a patient of Freud. She had somehow broken her hand and she had a dream. So a patient with a broken hand, she had a dream. In the dream, she saw herself as Napoleon Bonaparte. She saw herself as Napoleon Bonaparte. What is the meaning of that dream? So here, Napoleon had a strange mannerism. That is, he used to hold his hand like this. This is how he held his hand, Napoleon. But more than that, look at the name, Napoleon Bonaparte. Born apart. Born apart. That is why that experience is displaced with that name, Bonaparte. Born apart. So this is how the dream works. And then in literature, this has an application also. I mean, the literary work is also like a dream, a wish fulfillment of the author. And in literature also, the twin process, I mean, the figures of speech, metonymy and metaphor, can be analogous to condensation and displacement. Displacement is a kind of metonymy and condensation is a kind of metaphor. I am not going into the details because of the constraints of time. So this is another important contribution of Freud. And then another well-known concept introduced by Freud is the Freudian slip. What is called Freudian slip? What is a Freudian slip? Slips of the tongue. The slips of the tongue are called Freudian slips. And in technically they are called parapraxis also. Parapraxis. So the point is that in a computer announcement, you can see that there will not be any mistakes. In a computer announcement, there will not be any mistake. But the moment we open our mouth to say something, we commit mistakes. So the point is that the computer does not have an unconscious mind, but we have. And it is because of the working of the unconscious mind that we commit mistakes, slips of the tongue. A very well-known example is there, and that is quite interesting. That is why I am going to tell it. And once, I hope most of you are familiar with it. At least the professors, they are familiar with the example. So here, once, Freud was a Jew. Towards the end of his life, there were so many problems in Germany. Especially the Nazi Holocaust began in the 1930s, and Freud died in 1939. And so that means, during the last years of his life, there were several problems. And so, fearing persecution, he went to Vienna. Freud went to Vienna with his wife. And there he visited a beach. Freud visited a beach. And there at the beach he met a young man, another Jew. And when the young man saw Freud, he was very excited and he came up to speak to Freud. And he talked to him about the Holocaust, about the anti-Semitic feelings that were on the rise in Germany. And so he was so excited because he was really angry with the developments in Germany, and he was so excited, and he quoted a Latin phrase from Virgil's Aeneid. And that Latin phrase is, this is what he said: exorier nostras es ossibus ultor. So this is the Latin, what he said: exorier nostras es ossibus ultor, which means from her bonds, or from her bonds someone may arise. From her bonds someone may arise. That is the meaning of that phrase. But this is actually not the exact line. This is not the exact line because he missed the word there. That boy missed the word there. The actual dialogue is exorier aliquis nostras es possibus ultor. That means the boy missed that word aliquis. The boy missed that word aliquis. He did not use that word. He simply said exorier nostras es possibus ultor, which means the boy missed a word. And Freud corrected him. And then the boy accepted his mistake and he challenged Freud to explain why he had missed that word in his speech. So he challenged Freud because Freud had, introduced the concept of Freudian slips or parapraxis. So the boy challenged Freud to explain the reason why he had omitted that word in the speech. And then Freud accepted the challenge and he asked the boy to speak freely about all those items and concepts that rush to his mind in connection with the word aliquis. In connection with the word aliquis. And then the boy said these words: relic, liquid, liquefaction, Saint January, Saint Augustine. Relic, liquid, liquefaction, Saint January, Saint Augustine. These are the words. And Freud thought for a while and he asked the boy, do you have a girlfriend? Yes. Did you meet her today? Yes. Did she tell you something shocking? The boy became pale. And then Freud completed the sentence. Did she tell you something shocking, that she had missed her periods? And the boy fell on his knees. How? So this is how Freudian analysis works. So look at those words. Liquid, liquefaction, Saint January, Saint Augustine. So the connections are actually rather obvious because, Saint January is a saint whose relic is kept in a cathedral in the form of in the form of his blood. So that is his relic. The blood is the relic, and that is kept in a small bottle in a cathedral. And people believe that the blood would liquefy at a particular time of the year, and it would spill over the bottle. And there will be a large crowd in front of the cathedral to watch this miracle. And again, another word is very important. People become agitated if it is delayed. People become agitated if it is delayed. So here, relic, liquid, liquefaction, everything is clear. That is, they are related to one another. And what about the last two words? There is another word also there, Saint Augustine. And what is the significance of Saint Augustine? So look at the names of these two saints, Saint January and Saint Augustine. And what is special about these two names? Both of the names contain the names of 2 months, January and August. And now let us count: January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August. Someone may arise from ashes, or someone may arise from the bonds. Got it? So that means the girl is pregnant by 1 month now, and in most probably in August she will give birth to a child. And this is definitely a shocking thing. And so it is because of this fear in his mind, his unconscious mind intervened here and erased that word aliquis from his memory. So that is why he did not utter the word aliquis there. So this is how this Freudian analysis works. And so now, we have discussed most of the important concepts of Freud, but now because of the constraints of time, let us jump into Lacan. Jacques Lacan. And so here, after Freudian psychoanalysis or after Freud, there were two developments in psychology. One was object relations theory put forward by Melanie Klein. Melanie Klein's object relations theory. And the second one is Jacques Lacan. Jacques Lacan's Neo-Freudianism. Neo-Freudianism. So these are the two developments in psychology after that. Object relations theory and Neo-Freudianism. And Jacques Lacan is also called French Freud, and he was born in the year 1901 and died in 1981. And Lacan has been rightly called the French Freud. And Lacan, what is special about Lacan is that he reformulated all the Freudian theories on the basis of Saussurian linguistics. So that is special about Lacan. So he reformulated Freudian theories using Saussurian methodology. And it is said that reading Freud is very interesting, and reading Freud is almost like a detective story, reading a detective story. But in the case of Lacan, it is not so easy, because Lacan is sometimes notoriously difficult and confusing. And he employed Saussurian methodology in the analysis of, in psychoanalysis. That is his important contribution. And his first important contribution is that concept of mirror stage. Mirror stage, which he introduced in a paper at the annual conference of the International Psychoanalytic Association held in 1936. So in 1936, he presented this paper on mirror stage at the annual conference of the International Psychoanalytic Association. And in mirror stage, that essay, in that paper, he introduced a particular stage in the development of a child, which is called the mirror stage. For a proper understanding of mirror stage, we need to know the three mental registers of Lacan. Three mental dispositions introduced by Lacan, or three mental registers. They are the imaginary, the symbolic, and the real. The imaginary, the symbolic, and the real. The imaginary stage is, as Karyani has said, it is the stage of imaginary oneness with the environment. The child at this age is not able to distinguish itself from its surroundings. And that imaginary oneness is called the imaginary stage. So here, especially up to 6 months, the child is said to be in the imaginary stage where the child is in imaginary oneness with its environment. And the child is not able to distinguish itself from the environment. So to the child, everything is part of itself. The room, the cradle, the fan, the mother, and all those are part of itself in the imaginary stage. That is why it is called imaginary oneness. And at that time there is no sense of the other. And in Lacan there are two others. One is small other and the other is big other. Small other means the other with the small O. And the big other is the other with the capital O. These are two important concepts. The small other is what I am not. So what I am is the self, and what I am not is the other. Which other? The small other. So what I am is the self, and what I am not is the other, the small other. And what about the big other then? And that is a very complicated concept indeed. The big other refers to the whole overarching symbolic agency that determines the role of the individual in the society. So that means even before my birth, my identity or subjectivity was created. We got it? It is not our choice to be born here, to be born in a particular linguistic community, or to be born in Indian context, to be born in a particular religion or particular caste. That is not actually our choice. And all those things were predetermined even before our birth. And we actually happened to be there. The slot was there and we were thrown into the slot. And that slot, who created that slot or who was responsible for the creation of the slot, slot, and that is what is called the big other. It can be the society, it can be the language, it can be the state, and that which determines our subjectivity, that can be called the big other. And it is the big other that determines our role in the society. And so, these are the two others, small other and the big other. And in the imaginary stage, there is no sense of the other. But in the mirror stage, and mirror stage is actually the intermediary stage between the two, that is the imaginary stage and the symbolic stage. So there is an intermediary stage, and this is what is called the mirror stage. And the mirror stage starts from 6 months. 6 months and may last up to 18 months. From 6 to 18 months is called the mirror stage. And what is special about the mirror stage? So a child of this age, if he is taken to the mirror, what will be the response of the child? If the child and in this age is taken to a mirror, what will be his response? It will be a jubilant experience to the child. It may actually move its limbs or smile at the image. And once there was an experiment, they put the young one of a chimpanzee in front of the mirror. But what was the response of the chimpanzee? The chimpanzee at once tried to catch the other chimpanzee on the mirror. Then he searched behind the mirror for the chimpanzee. And a little later, the young one of the chimpanzee became completely indifferent to the mirror image. He became completely indifferent to the mirror image. So the difference is that the chimpanzees saw just another chimpanzee on the mirror, whereas the human child sees himself in the mirror. And that is the difference. So now the child again recognizes his mirror image. And this is a jubilant experience because this image is what is called the ideal I. And this ideal I guarantees him freedom from motor incapacity. Because human beings it is said that human beings are prematurely born. Why? Human beings are prematurely born because in all the species of the world, it is we, the human beings, who have the longest childhood. And all the other animals, they are able to stand or walk within a few hours after their birth. But in the case of the human child, it takes almost 1 year to stand. And that means the human child must be taken care of by somebody else, otherwise it will die. And we have the longest childhood, and that means there is motor incapacity, not able to walk or eat. And so this mirror image guarantees the child the freedom from motor incapacity because he identifies his body. He identifies himself. So that oneness breaks down. The imaginary oneness breaks down, and the child is now able to distinguish between self and the other. The child is now able to distinguish between the self and the other. And so that imaginary oneness breaks down. And this is what happens in the mirror stage. And again, so here the point is that the child sees his image on the mirror. And now the thing is that at first we can say that he recognizes the mirror image. But at the same time, according to Lacan, this is not a recognition. This is a misrecognition. The child identifies himself with his image. But this is not a recognition, this is a misrecognition. Why? Because the image is that he identifies himself with his image and not with himself. So what he sees on the mirror is his image and not himself. And this image is something external to him. And now let me ask you a very simple question. Have you seen yourselves? Have you seen yourselves? No. We haven't actually seen ourselves. Why? Because what we see is only our image on the mirror, or in the video clip, or in the picture. You are actually watching your image.
And that is inverted also.
Yes. So because of this, what we can see is that the child identifies something external to himself as something external to him as himself. And that is why Lacan said that this is not a recognition, this is a misrecognition. And then in the next stage, at the end of the mirror stage, the child is pushed into the symbolic stage, where the image is replaced by linguistic identity, linguist I, or the subjectivity offered by language, and this happens in the symbolic stage. So the thing is that at first the child articulates its desires and feelings in its own language, but soon the child understands that this woman will not understand my language, and it is better for me to learn her language to get my needs addressed. This is the realization that the child arrives in the symbolic stage. And now the child is pushed into the symbolic matrix of language, and this is the symbolic stage. And now the next mental register is the real. So what is the real? So these are the three stages: imaginary, the symbolic, and the real. And mirror stage is the intermediary stage between the imaginary and the symbolic and real. So that is a very complicated concept. And I hope you are familiar with the Saussurian algorithm of the sign. The sign is equal to signifier by signified. Signifier by signified. How? Signifier by signified. So in this algorithm, Lacan is interested in the line that separates the signifier from the signified. So that's a very complicated concept indeed. So Lacan once said that the very process of giving a name to an object is killing it. The very process of giving name to an object is killing it. Why? Because the object is reduced to a mere linguistic sign. The object is reduced to a mere linguistic sign. And what is the criterion for giving names to things? How do we name things? What is the criteria for giving names to things? So when we name a thing, we take into consideration how it matters to us. How it matters to us. That is the logic on which we give names to things. So take the word kudira in Malayalam. What is the meaning of kudira? Kudikinnathu. And so that means that is how the animal matters to us. So we give names to things only on the basis of how these things matter to us, which means we become blind to all the other important features of the same animal or the object. You got the point? So when we call the lotus ambujam, it only means that something born in water. Ambu means water. Ambujam means born in the water. When we call it the same flower pankajam, which means it born in the mud. And these things reflect only one aspect of the flower. And there is not a single term that contains all the important features of the flower. So the same is actually the logic of giving names to things. We name things only on the basis of how they matter to us, which means all other properties and dimensions of the object are suppressed under an extra linguistic barrier. And that situation is what is called the real before the object is reduced to a symbol. That particular situation is what is called the real. And so human beings have been displaced from the real. And there is a a story. Once a grocer wrote salt on the packet of sugar, and then somebody asked him why, and then he said that it is just to fool the ants. Just to fool the ants. And it seems that ants will come in the morning and read all those labels and go straight to it. So this is how we identify things. But in the case of the ants, this, the way in which he understands things, the way in which it understands things is not actually using symbolic code, but using the real. They exist in the real. The animals exist in the realm of the real. So that's the thing. So these are the three mental dispositions: the imaginary, the symbolic, and the real. And another major, two more concepts are there. After that, we shall go. The next one is that he said that the unconscious is structured like language. That is another important contribution of Lacan. So this is how he said that Freud is different from Lacan. What is special about Freudian unconscious? Freudian unconscious is a repository of unfulfilled desires or repressed feelings. A repository of repressed feelings. Freudian unconscious. That is, it is located within the human psyche. Freudian unconscious is located within the human psyche. But in the case of Jung, C.G. Jung, another psychologist, it is collective. It contains the memory of the race. The third person who theorized the unconscious mind is Lacan. And he said that the unconscious is not located within the human psyche. It is located in inter-subject relationships. It is located in inter-subject relationships. Just like language, the human unconscious is located in inter-subject relationships. Because according to Lacan, the unconscious is actually made in the symbolic realm, in the symbolic order. So we live in the symbolic order, and it is in this symbolic order that unconscious is formed. So according to Lacan, the unconscious is located in inter-subject relationships. And this is how he said that the unconscious is structured like language. And then another important contribution of Lacan is his concept of desire. What is desire? And he used a formula to explain desire. The formula is this: desire is equal to demand minus need. Demand minus need. Demand minus need is desire. This is what he said. Demand minus need is desire. So what is desire? So desire is actually related to lack. We desire the things we lack. So this desire starts from birth itself. So the moment we got separated from our mothers, we developed what is called a desire. And the first desire was the desire for the mother. The desire for the mother. The desire to see the mother. The desire to have the mother near us. So that is the first desire, and then that desire is substituted by a series of other desires. Desire for a toy, desire for ice cream, and all such things. And this desire is something that we get when we subtract a need from demand. So see, just imagine a situation. A father taking his small boy to the street. Then first the boy will say, "Daddy, I want an ice cream." So that is a demand. Then the father will say, okay, you can have it. The father buys an ice cream for the boy. And the boy will say, "Daddy, I want a lollipop." Okay, you can have it. Then the father buys a lollipop for the boy. A little later, the boy says, "Daddy, I want a toy." So see, each time demands are made. but needs are satisfied. So demands are made, but each time only the need is satisfied. But there is still left something left unsatisfied. There is still something left unsatisfied. That is why he makes fresh demands. You got it? So, Daddy, I want an ice cream. Okay, the ice cream is given, and at that time only the need is satisfied. There is still something left there unsatisfied. So that is why he makes another demand. Daddy, I want a toy. So see, each time the need is satisfied, but the desire is not. And that which is left unsatisfied is what is called a desire. And that desire is not meant for a particular material object. Maybe the boy wants to check whether this man loves me that much. You got it? And that desire for love, caring, and that can be the desire there. And so, this is actually applicable in love relationship also. In every love relationship, no partner is satisfied after hearing, I love you only once. And if possible, that will be repeated daily. I love you, because that's the confirmation. And that is Lacan's psychology of love. Because in every love relationship, each person is eager to know whether he or she is the object of desire of his or her object of desire. You got the idea? So in every love relationship, every person wants to know whether he or she is the object of desire of his or her object of desire. Suppose if I love a girl, she is the object of my desire. And now I want to know whether I am the object of desire of the girl. Then only this will become complete. And that is why Lacan said that every love is self-love. Every love is self-love. Why? I love myself, that is more meaningful. So why I love a particular person? Because I see something of myself in that particular person. That is why I love that person. I see something of myself in that particular person. That is why I love her or I love him. And that means I am loving something of myself reflected in that particular person. And so that is why Lacan said that I love you is meaningful, and what is meaningless. What is meaningful is I love myself. Okay? And again, in the case of Hamlet, according to Lacan, Hamlet is a tragedy of desire. Hamlet is a tragedy of desire. What is the problem in Hamlet? Where in Hamlet, the problem is that Hamlet does not get the confirmation that he is the object of desire of his object of desire. That was the problem in Hamlet. He does not get the confirmation that he is the object of desire of his object of desire. Who was the object of desire of Hamlet? Gertrude. And then who was Gertrude's object of desire? Not definitely Hamlet, but Claudius. Which means Hamlet wanted to kill the object of desire of his object of desire. So that was why he procrastinates. This is Lacan's reading of Hamlet. And amidst this struggle, according to Lacan, Hamlet became an omelette. So, and not a joke indeed, Hamlet became an omelette. And here the spelling of the omelette is H-O-M-M-E-L-E-T-T-E.
Omelette.
And in H is silent there. In the French it is silent, H is silent. H-O-M-M-E-L-E-T-T-E. Hamlet becomes an omelette. Why? What is the meaning of omelette in French? A person with a broken self. A person with a broken self. And definitely Lacan intended a pun also. So, a person with a broken self. Hamlet became a person with a broken self, And also Hamlet's subjectivity is scrambled like an omelette. So that was the pun intended there. Hamlet becomes an omelette. So here, so this is how Lacan read Hamlet. And so now, in a hurry, we discussed some of the major concepts introduced by Lacan. And for last stage of this is what can now be called the schizoanalysis. Sir, 2 minutes.
Please.
Schizoanalysis. Schizoanalysis is a concept introduced by whom? Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari. Gilles Deleuze, D-I-L-L-E-S. G-I-L-L-E-S. Gilles Deleuze, D-E-L-E-U-Z-E. Gilles Deleuze and Felix Guattari, F-E-L-I-X, G-U-A-T-T-A-R-I, Felix Guattari. So they introduced this concept of schizoanalysis, in which they rejected the entire tradition of psychoanalysis. And so, in that sense, schizoanalysis is a kind of anti-psychiatry. It is not psychiatry, but it is anti-psychiatry. Schizoanalysis. What is schizoanalysis? So here, Deleuze and Guattari said that all mental problems and mental psychiatric problems are located where? In the symbolic order. So that means in the Oedipus complex, what is now called the Oedipus complex, in which we can see a triangular relationship. A triangular relationship between, that means the father, the son and the mother. And so that this is how the family is developed. And that is what Levi-Strauss said. And so according to Levi-Strauss, the foundation of the society was incest prohibition. And it was incest prohibition that created family. Without incest prohibition, there would not have been any family at all. It is incest prohibition that enabled a person to remain as the father of the house, or the mother of the house, or the son or the daughter. Without incest prohibition, there would not have been any such subjective positions. And remember, incest is prohibited only by the human beings. And it is not prohibited among other animals. And only human beings live in organized societies. And since there is a prohibition on incest, a girl in the family cannot marry a man in the same family. So she should be sent to another family in a matrimonial relationship. So they invented the institution of marriage. So now two families are connected with a marriage. And if there is a girl in the second family, she would be given to another family. And then the connection widens, and now it's a connection of 3 families. And thus, in short, as Levi-Strauss had said, the human society evolved through the exchange of girls. The human society evolved through the exchange of girls. And so that means all these relationships exist in the symbolic realm. And so that means this is something constructed. This symbolic order is something constructed. This Oedipal order is something constructed by the human beings. And so that means schizoanalysis takes takes life beyond this beyond this fixed pattern of psychoanalytical experience. So that means we are actually expected to perform certain roles in life. So then, the boy will be, or the girl or the boy will be sent to school after school, college, then getting a job, getting married, and then rearing children, and then government job, retirement, and death. This is actually the usual pattern of life. And if a person is deviated from this kind of a pattern, he is actually branded as abnormal. And so abnormality is located within this. And schizoanalysis liberates the individual from this bondage. And if you think that you are a horse, don't worry, you are thinking of another possibility. There is nothing abnormal about you. Because in psychoanalytical experience, you are actually supposed to behave in a certain way. So you are oppressed by this society or this order. But you are liberated from such oppressions and bondage in schizoanalysis. And this is actually something, highly, complex. And so this is, a later development of psychoanalysis. here Deleuze and Guattari completely rejected the ideas put forward by Freud and Lacan. So I think I have taken more time, and with this I am winding up. Thank you all. Thank you.